No breathless diatribe of legislation today, just one very simple sentence: a state-mandated program. We see it in the Legislative Digest in over half of the anti-2A bills that we talk about here at CRPA, but what does it actually mean? Let's talk about it. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel today. That is right, we are here to talk about one very specific thing that we continue to see bill after bill from the California legislature. Of course, to walk us through that, we have brought back the legislative director of CRPA. You can also find him on AM 590 The Answer, hosting Firing Line Radio every Saturday at 1 p.m. That, of course, is Rick Travis. Rick, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you. Always a pleasure, Kevin.
Yeah, absolutely. So no breathless hieroglyphs to go through today, like I'm sure you are well accustomed to doing. Rick, I wanted to go over one very specific thing that we continue to see in these bills, and it's this. It is a state-mandated local program. We see this in a lot of bills that end up getting implemented or just proposed at the legislature. Before we dive into how it can potentially be affecting Californians today and into the future, I'm hoping that you can just kind of inform us here. What is it when they say a state-mandated local program? What is that exactly?
That's where the legislature, and that's a great question, Kevin, but that's where the legislature, when it passes a bill and it's signed into law by the governor, imposes a new program on an agency below the state legislature that requires the expenditure of funds.
So you're talking about spending money, yes? Like, I guess, and this is kind of the reason that I bring it up, because California is broke. We've reported a budget deficit. I'm sort of curious how you see funds going to these sorts of programs, not necessarily with what we have in the legislature right now, but we have bills that have already been signed that are being implemented over the course of time. You know, we've got some legislation from 2-3 years ago that's coming into effect March this year or January next year. When we're running a budget deficit, how are these bills affected when we don't seem to have money to put into these programs, but the laws are still being implemented?
That's an excellent question. My snarky answer would be that the governor and his cronies see themselves as the Confederate States of America. As long as we can print money, we can spend money, even though there's nothing backing that paper. But the serious answer is, Kevin, you can look to a fine. And I don't mean a fine as in good. I bet it's an example, a fine example of a state local mandated program that has cost the Californian taxpayers millions of dollars, and was never thought like, oh, do we have the money to do this? And that would be the simple mail-in ballot that we have for the past couple of elections. That requires every local county to A, do a mailing, B, to do a print up, C, to send it to everybody, where prior to that bill being passed, it was simply a program that was, hey, if you knew you weren't going to be in town, you turned in for an absentee ballot. Now everybody gets one. And that would be an example of a state-mandated local program. This is something that we talk about all the time. We are running in a multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar deficit. So we don't have money. They don't know where the money is coming from. But there is another part of this that's actually much more sinister, Kevin, and that is when you go to throw the argument of, hey, you can't do this program because you don't have the money to pay for it. Do you know what their answer is? Let's run another bill and tax the very people that we want to run the locally state mandated through. So when we said you don't have money and other people said you don't have money for all this felonious research that you want to do about gun owners and why we should vilify them and why we should do this and why we should do that, they said, oh, how about 11% tax?
The taxation later ends up covering the programs, which kind of covers the other question that I had for you. We have legislation right now where several of these bills state that they would need a state-mandated local program in order to implement. It kind of sounds like maybe you can just solidify this for me, Because it sounds like what you're saying is they have no problem maybe raising another bill either this session or next session, taxing gun owners even more just to pay for the programs that are stripping them of their rights. So you don't see this as something that would slow down legislation that we currently have in session right now because of a budget deficit?
It could, but to do that, it has to be more than my voice and a half a dozen other people that represent the people of California. Californians need to start like literally getting vocal. They need to start, jumping out and saying, hey, what the heck? I mean, it's like every time we turn around in the Capitol, within the Second Amendment community, within activities that are derived from our Second Amendment rights, to almost everything you could do as a Californian, the answer is we're going to tell you how you should live, and then we're going to make you pay for it in bigger taxes. And what people aren't doing is they're not adding these taxes up. I mean, one of the things that our founding president, George Washington, said is, hey, add these little taxes up and they're this much, and anything over 3% is a right to tell the government, you're not going to be my government anymore. Look, we already have some of the highest taxes in the nation on everything from gas to sales tax and everything. So, just a year and a half ago, you could go out and buy $1,000 firearm, and at most, depending on where you lived with local taxes, maybe you're going to pay $1,100 and change with taxes and all. Now that's nearing the $1,300 mark, thanks to the additional 11% and other local taxes, and they're perfectly okay with that. Well, there's a lot of us that are like, yeah, if I'm spending $1,000, that's significant. $1,300, yeah, that's why I didn't look at the $1,200 gun. I didn't have the money for the $1,200 gun. I had the money for, you know what I mean? So we're seeing that have a negative impact on people exercising their Second Amendment rights and being able to go and purchase things. And there's a lot of people that can't afford the firearms at half that price with those taxes. And what they're going to continue to do is use taxes, because that's very much what social Marxism does, is they use economics to direct people to a different way of life.
Well, we certainly see the attempt here as we continue to see these state-mandated local programs introduced in new legislation every single year. And yeah, you're right. I mean, we are far over a limit that George Washington would have set at 3%. And if in case we didn't need any more reasons to oppose bills like this, every single bill that this gets put into is potential for raising taxes either this year or next year or the year after. So definitely want to be proactive in opposing these bills, as we always are. And guys, always watch out for those emails, those one-click politics emails. Rick will probably be the first person to tell you that they do have an impact up at the Capitol. The more that these legislators hear from us and they see those opposition letters, the more likely they are to understand that their constituents don't want a bill like that happening. So, Rick, what are your final thoughts? I guess not just with this, but the legislature as a whole. We're coming to the end of February. The bill numbers are starting to become a little bit more set. What's the outlook for legislation session?
It's going to be a very tough fight this year. It always is. We have some very positive bills from the new guard that has been elected in. We need to take more seats here in about 18 months, which is unbelievable that we're going to be looking at another election that quick, but that's the case. And we need to flip those seats, and to do that, we need all hands on deck.
Well, they'll certainly be there. We are going to continue advocating, especially in a time where we've got some pro-2A bills. Guys, now is the time to make those gains. We've got the support of the federal government so far. There's a lot of change that's happening up there. Let's enact that change here. Keep the ball rolling forward. Rick, I know that you're a busy guy going up and down from Sacramento. I know that takes a toll, but as always, appreciate you coming on and sharing with us.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure, Kevin.
Absolutely. And guys, once again, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to these videos. It really helps get this information as far and wide as possible. We are trying to bring as many people into this cause, like I said, so that we can keep the good things rolling here in California. It's also a great way for you to directly contribute to the legislative and litigative efforts in the Second Amendment movement here in California. Thanks again, guys, and we'll see you on the next one.